Welcome to my Dublin Horse Show, the show that I consider the greatest horse show in the world, where for 1 week each year the country comes to visit the city, actually to the RDS in the centre of Dublin. People travel from all over Ireland and abroad. Accommodation is often booked a year in advance. Restaurants and bars enjoy great patronage. Old friends meet up again, and there's a packed horse show programme to please all tastes. It is the greatest horse show because on display are 1,600 horses and ponies, 130 classes, 1 million in prize money, and over 100,000 visitors come to the show each year. The first show was actually held in 1864 on Leinster Lawns in Kildare Street, which is now the head of the Irish Parliament, or the Dáil. The first leaping show, which was jumping, was in 1868, and the winner was Richard Flynn, a farmer from Roscommon, on a horse called Sean Rua. Probably my equestrian influences were my mother and my uncle. They were both involved in horses, and I was bitten by the bug on ponies and horses from a very young age. One of our local heroes was actually Colonel Dan Corrie, famous team member of the Army Equitation School. He's from Loughrea, a local hero. He was on the team that won 4 in a row between 1935 and 1938. He won 55 international competitions, 14 Nations Cups, and numerous Grand Prix. The only vision I had of the horse show, because I was born and reared in the early days before television, was from Movietone News, or Pathé News, which was shown in the cinemas. And I was always eager at some stage to go to the show. But my family association goes back to my grandfather, T.B. Higgins, who was a school teacher, a farmer and a businessman in Athenry in County Galway. He was showing sheep here at the Spring Show over 100 years ago, and he was a founder of the Galway Sheep Society in 1927, and my uncle continued that tradition for the period of the Spring Show. My first visit to the RDS was around 1950 as a 6-year-old. I came to the Spring Show, and the reason I know that is that there's a photograph of me at home on a Massey Ferguson tractor that somebody took of me at that Spring Show. But my first Dublin Horse Show was in 1955. I was 11 years of age at the time, and I travelled on my own on the train to Dublin. My mother actually wrote the address of a guest house in Leeson Street on the back of an envelope, and fortunately I found my way there. They were different times. I recall my first day at the show. There was busy outside the RDS gates. There was a constant stream of horses from the railway siding across the road, which was a favourite way of transporting horses at the time to the horse show. They were transported in livestock carriages, and probably traffic was a lot less in those days, so there was plenty of room for horses to cross. I saw many of the household names that I had known, like Nat Galway Greer, that great showman from Dunboyne, the Bambers from Ballymena, the Dudgeons from Burton Hall, Iris Kellett from down the road in Mespel, and of course, all the army riders. When I entered the grounds in 1955, I saw a lot of familiar faces there. But what struck me was really the huge roar and applause from the main arena. There were wall-to-wall horses in rings 1 and 2, as in those days there were huge entries in the showing classes. As I recall, Italy won the Aga Khan Cup. Colonel Raimondo D'Inzeo was on that team, and he was probably what we would call nowadays a superstar of the time. The Italians and the Swiss were very popular in Ireland because they bought a lot of Irish horses. And the D'Inzeos had competed on Irish horses like Bellevue, Gowan Girl, Red Fox, Hill Fox, and won many medals at the Olympic Games and the World Championships. And I was fortunate later to meet him in Italy outside Rome, where he was given lessons at an equitation centre. Later as an adult, I joined the RDS as a member. I also served on the Library and Archives Committee, which was a privilege to do. As a photojournalist, I've been reporting on the show for a number of years, which has given me a close-up view of the many events that take place during the week. I researched a number of my books in the RDS Library, and I started taking photographs of the show about 20 years ago, and I compiled the best photographs into a book I published in 2018 titled The Dublin Horse Show. Later, I formed a syndicate with some friends, and we purchased some show horses that we took to the horse show, which was a very enjoyable experience as well. So for me, it's been very enjoyable to be part and parcel of the RDS. For a number of people, they don't actually see this, but it's very well worth seeing because it happens usually on the Wednesday of the week. It's the official opening of the show by the Dublin Lord Mayor. The coach actually comes down Merrion Road, and it usually has Garda outriders. But the coach itself is very, very impressive. It was built by William Whitten in Dominic Street in Dublin, and it first appeared in 1791 on the streets of Dublin. Today it's drawn by 4 horses. It's 24 feet long, 8 foot wide, 11 foot 6 inches high, and it has an exceptionally high standard of gilding, lacquering, carving, and often referred to as a gallery on wheels. In those days, there were 40 coach building businesses in Dublin, employing 1,900 people. Here we see Matt Dempsey, who was the president of the RDS that particular year, welcoming the Lord Mayor of Dublin with the RDS chief executive, Michael Duffy. The chain of office that the Lord Mayor wears actually goes back to 1698. So the Mayor of Dublin, actually the position has been in existence since 1229. The Aga Khan Nations Cup is probably the highlight for a lot of people of the week. Originally for military teams, it was the idea of the Swiss Army's Colonel Ziegler, who suggested holding an international competition in 1925. The event actually took place in 1926, the first one. And His Highness the Aga Khan, who had an Irish tutor when he was younger, a Mr. Kenny, had a firm association with Ireland, and he offered to put up a trophy. It's Georgian period in design on an ebony plinth, 2 feet 3 inches high. And the instigation of the Irish Army Equitation School was the idea of a Galway native, Patrick Hogan, who was Minister for Agriculture at the time, Judge Wiley of the RDS, and Edward Bohan. The cup itself has been won outright 5 times and is always replaced. Ireland won it, as I mentioned, 4 years in a row in 1937. And again, it was won in 1977 to 79 on 3 successive occasions by Ireland again. Aga Khan Nations Cup Day is a very special day. And actually, you need to be there to soak up the atmosphere. The bands are marching, leading out the teams, the national flags. It's a spectacular occasion, full of colour, tradition, formality, style, yet, above all, a packed arena of spectators where during a round you could hear a pin drop. And the spectators really get behind their teams. Just a short selection of international show jumpers. We have Cian O'Connor, who's the current senior rider. He won a bronze medal in the Olympics. In fact, he represented Ireland twice in the Olympics. And he was a member of the Aga Khan winning team on a number of occasions. He's competed in a number of world championships and in European championships, and he's over 100 caps for Ireland. Recently, he coached Max Watchman to win the Europeans in the ponies. And he has always been a very important anchorman for the Irish teams. Eddie Mackin, who most people will be familiar with, was certainly the stylist. His 2 top horses were Boomerang and Pele. Boomerang won 4 Hickstead Derbies. It was twice runner-up in the World Championships. He won a silver in the Europeans. And Eddie represented Ireland in the Olympics in Barcelona. and he was on that famous team that won 3 in a row from 1977 to 1979. One of the younger talents that's come along is Bertram Allen, and he was performing on the senior team as a 17-year-old. He's been on many Nations Cups teams. His brother Harry is also a talented show jumper. Bertram actually won all the pony classes here in Dublin. His 2 most recent wins were actually in Wellington in Florida and in Toronto in Canada. Just selected one of the overseas riders who's been coming here for a number of years, which is Beezie Madden. Beezie has a fantastic record in show jumping. She's won 2 Olympic gold, a silver, a bronze. She's won the World Cup twice and won the silver and bronze in the World Championships and the Pan American Games. And she's the first woman to win over $1 million in show jumping. I think this shows her talent, the way she sits on the horse, a superb stylist. Some teams express themselves differently when they win the Aga Khan Nations Cup. And I thought this just was typical of the Irish team, who are demonstrating here what it means to win the Aga Khan Cup. But the following year, the Mexicans had brought their sombreros ready just in case, and were very popular winners in 2018. The puissance is one of the highlights of the week, which is the high wall. And I'm showing Cian O'Connor here jumping 7 foot 5 inches, which was a record in 1998. And he repeated that a couple of occasions later. He had a very good horse, Casper, at the time, who was a puissance specialist. And he's always been a great supporter of the puissance and never short of a suitable horse. Just one other was Michael Duffy. And I like this photograph that I took of Michael because I think it demonstrates the supreme effort of the horse is making, and how Michael is sitting so still and above all so balanced, giving the horse plenty of rein to stretch his neck, which is important at a high fence. The Grand Prix is one of the highest money prizes of the week. And here I'm just showing Captain Jerry Flynn, who's riding for the Army on the mare McCree. McCree has been a linchpin of the Irish Army Equitation School, a regular winner on the international and national circuit. And you'll see her again later in my presentation. The stewards, all voluntary, are an integral part of the Dublin Horse Show. And I like this because it shows how they get involved in the celebrations afterwards, cheering on Lorenzo De Luca from Italy, who won the Grand Prix in 2016. Lorenzo has been a very popular rider at the Dublin Horse Show. And some years ago, he had a very nice Irish sport horse called Limestone Grey. And he received his award that year as the leading rider of the show. The backbone of breeding in Ireland has been the Irish draught, of which the RDS have been very quick to promote over the years. Here we see Peter McLaughlin, an Irish draught breeder, and Uda Houlihan, another Irish draught breeder from Kildare, showing their mare and foal. This is a tradition that goes back for many, many generations, and people will know that the Irish draught, crossed with the thoroughbred horse, has produced some fantastic show jumpers and particularly eventers over the years. Side saddle has come back into its own in the last few years, and members of the RDS will often see the painting of Sisi, the Empress of Austria, riding side saddle in the RDS members area. Maeve is riding the Irish draught stallion Kappa Aristocrat here. She's from County Galway, and she actually trained and schooled this young stallion from a very early age. One of the main events for the Irish draught breeders is the Irish Draught Performance Champion. And all families are involved in the breeding of these horses. And here I show the Lamberts from Wexford and what it means to win at the Dublin show. Jack Lambert is one of the old-style horsemen who's bred a lot of horses over the years. And one time I asked him to explain the temperament of an Irish draught horse, and he replied, if he stood on your toe, he would nearly apologise. And that explains the temperament of the Irish draught horse, why they're safe around people and they're so biddable. Jack bred the great sire Grange Bouncer, who was a Grade A show jumper and a junior international event horse. And we see also Karina in the centre here, who is his granddaughter, and she is now a junior international rider. The Connemara pony is probably better known in showing and in-hand classes and ridden. But recently, they have been proving themselves on the show jumping circuit. Kelly, Allen and Michael Duffy won a gold and a silver at the European Championships. Just goes to prove the versatility of the Connemara pony. Former President Erskine Childers had some Connemara ponies on the grounds of Áras an Uachtaráin in the Phoenix Park, and maybe we'll see that again. One of our other young top-rate competitors has been Kate Derwin, and Kate has won most of the pony classes here in Dublin. And last year she was crowned European champion. Kate and her siblings from County Westmeath have been performing in Dublin for many years. She has also competed around Europe, and she certainly is a star of the future. The children get a chance to ride in the main arena in some of the small pony competitions. But here, a very innovative class, which is the international riders and the children's class in the main arena. And it's a great opportunity for the children. And here we see former world champion Dermot Lennon and Mikey Pender. And in fact, they joined by other national team riders, and they pair off with the children and ride against each other. It's very competitive and attracts a young group of spectators. Probably most children start at lead rein. It's really a stepping stone to the future. And we see Catherine and Alex O'Connor here in the lead rein competition. They move on then to first ridden, to showing classes, often move on to pony club, and many become senior riders in time. The Supreme Hunter Championship is the blue ribbon, really, of the show hunters. Nat Galway-Greer has the show record. He won 10 Supreme Championships. And here we see Frances Cash from County Limerick, a very talented horsewoman. She lies second with 7 Supreme Hunter Championships, which were Standing Ovation, Glengarriff, Overture, Formidable, Caruso, Kashmir, and Hack McGandy. She rode the winners of 50 point-to-point races, and she had a natural eye for a future champion. Together with her husband and horse dealer Ned Cash, they were associated with international show jumpers like Jerry Patrick, Condy, Castle Park, Buttevin Boy, Mostrim, and others. And Ned's son, Ned Jr., actually rode on 2 Aga Khan Cup teams. Other show horse producers are Jane Bradbury. And Jane has competed at the show for a number of years, but that elusive Supreme Hunter Championship evaded her until 2011, when on Daphne Tierney's, who owned the horse, Bloomfield Ollie, she won in 2011, and again with Bloomfield Excelsior in 2014. Here's a lineup of show hunter champions, the current top producers. Well, some of the current top producers, there are others. And from the left we see Brian Murphy, PJ Casey, Mary Rothwell, Leslie Webb, and Jane Bradbury, all sitting on champions that particular year. A very special occasion was when PJ and Sonia Casey won both the Supreme Hunter Championship and the Reserve in 2019. PJ rode Crown Star, and Sonia, his wife, rode Greenhall Push Button. It was a unique double. Now, it's done before by Nat Galway-Greer and I think George Chapman and Billy Connors in '79 riding Zatopek and Grenadier, but I believe is the first hunter championship and reserve won by a husband and wife. Here we see Fort Knox, who was the Supreme Hunter Champion in 2016. It was produced by Kilkenny horse producer Pat Loughlin, and we can see the excitement in Pat as it was his first Supreme Hunter Championship, throwing his cap in the air, ridden by Brian Murphy. It's also interesting that Fort Knox is a pure Irish draught, showing substance, conformation, rideability, has a great gallop, as was judged by 5 overseas judges, and it was a very proud day for the traditional Irish horse breeders. For the breeders, the Breeders' Championship is the highlight for them, where they show their mares and foals. We see on the left Michael Slavin, who's been the voice of equestrianism in Ireland for many, many years. He's broadcast all over Europe, the Olympics, World Championships, and also has a keen interest in the Irish draft breed and in the donkeys. On the right is Leo Powell. He's the editor of the Irish Field, who sponsored the event. Leo's brother Brendan won the Entry Grand National on Rhyme and Reason in 1998. Second careers for off-the-track racehorses. A special event has been created in the last number of years for them to give them careers in show jumping, in eventing, in dressage, or just as leisure horses. And the RDS has this special event at the Dublin Horse Show, the Racehorse to Riding Horse event. It's very popular because you'll see Grand National winners, Cheltenham Gold Cup winners, champion hurls, horses like Silver Birch, War of Attrition, Moscow Flyer. Here we see Binocular, who won the Cheltenham champion hurl, trained by Nicky Henderson. And on this occasion, Nicky was actually judging the event. When it won the Cheltenham champion hurl, it was ridden by Sir Anthony McCoy, considered the greatest steeplechase jockey, with 20 consecutive titles, and a record 4,358 winners. Tom Bustede got the ride here, but Sir Anthony McCoy actually came back and he actually judged this class a couple of years later. The young eventing class is very popular because it has the stars of the future. And Louise Codd in this picture is a talented producer and event rider from County Wexford. She has a number of Dublin Horse Show wins to her credit. But what I wanted to show here is you see on the landing side you've got a statue of a fox and hens. And one thing you will notice at the Dublin Horse Show is the creativity and how innovative the people who build the fences are. We have fences like the Spider's Web, the Round Tower, the Library Fence. I mean, just to see the fences alone at the Dublin Horse Show is an experience in itself. I show Colonel Ronnie McMahon and Sarah Ennis here. And the late Ronnie McMahon, he was officer in command of the Army Equitation School. He was an international show jumper and event rider. One of his best horses was San Carlos. He represented Ireland in 2 Olympic Games, but he was the innovator in a number of classes, particularly the young eventer class. But he also was a founding member of Riding for the Disabled. And here we also see Sarah Ennis, who is a senior Irish event rider and producer. And she won a World Championship silver medal in Tryon in North Carolina on the Irish team. 2 very interesting horses here. As I mentioned, I've shown McCree earlier on and Cruising. But Cruising is the sire of McCree. And this is a very interesting photograph because Cruising is 29 years of age here. And he's there with his daughter McCree, who's 17, on the day that McCree retired in show jumping. But before she retired, on that particular day, she won the international speed competition. Cruising is probably the most influential show jumping and eventing sire. He's a 5-star stallion. Mary McCann of Hartwell Stud owns the horse. But she also bred 2 other horses, Cruising Arish and Cruising Encore. and they are 100% genetically identical clones to cruising. The sportsman class for para riders is a very popular class in the RDS. And para-equestrian and Para-Olympics has been shown on television worldwide. Here we see Emma Cahill. Emma was paralysed after a fall in France, and the doctors told her she would never ride again. She was confined to a wheelchair for a long, long time. But she felt a little feeling in one of her toes, and with sheer grit and determination, over a period of time, she got back into competition. She completed 2 degrees in the meantime and has her master's, and she works now as a senior strategic marketing manager for the Kerry Group in North America. She is also a speaker and director for Spinal Injuries Ireland. Dublin Horse Show Awards, and I've just selected one on this occasion. There are many awards each year which are given for various, to various people. Here I show Hugh Leonard and Charles Powell. Both are long-serving members of the RDS committees, men of many talents. Hugh was over 70 years a steward at the RDS, continues to be a senior steward at the RDS. He was a show rider, a judge, a jockey. He was an international polo player. He was the first man to import polo horses from Argentina, and also a serious horse producer. Charles Powell was a chairman of the Equestrian Committee in the RDS, a long-time steward of the horse show, and has a deep interest in carriage driving and national hunt racing. Irish donkeys are not forgotten, and the Irish Donkey Society have put on a number of displays in the RDS in the last few years. In 2018, they put on display Remembering Animals in War, showing the donkeys on this occasion pulling a small cannon, which was reminiscent of World War I. It was a special tribute to the animals lost in war because there were millions of horses, mules and donkeys lost over the years of the war. They were really the forgotten heroes. One of the other visitors to the Dublin Horse Show has been Princess Anne in 2016. Here I show Princess Anne with Pat Hanley, who's the director of the horse show, with Jane Dara, who's the wife of Paul Dara, who was a senior rider, a very successful international rider for Ireland. Princess Anne in her own right was European eventing champion in 1971 on her horse Doublet. She won a silver in the 1975 European Championships. She was on the British team for 5 years, and she represented Britain at the Montreal Olympics in 1976. She visited the RDS the day the Italians won the Aga Khan Cup. But before she visited the main arena, she walked casually around the grounds to see the showing classes, and she took a particular interest in the Irish Draught stallions. I wonder, is it a coincidence? Because here we see Irish Draught stallion Kappa Casanova. We've learned since that Her Majesty the Queen, a keen conservationist on rare breeds, has used the services of James and Edel Flynn's Kappa Casanova on 2 of her mares. One mare was an Irish Draught and the other an Irish sport horse. And that particular Irish sport horse mare was used to draw the carriage of Prince Harry and Meghan at their wedding. Another visitor was Bruce Springsteen, and here we see him with his wife Patty, who's part of his band. They were there to see their daughter-in-law Jessica win on the American Aga Khan Cup team. The boss, as he's familiarly known, and his wife Patty had just finished a tour with their E Street band, and they joined their Irish pals Enda Bulger, who trained a horse for Bruce, and Tom Bustede. The Springsteens have a horse farm in New Jersey. It's interesting now that Bruce Springsteen has played in the RDS arena, and now his daughter Jessica, a fine rider, was a member of the victorious American team in that very same arena. The family that probably go back the longest to the first horse show, the first leaping competition in 1868 are Lord Patrick and Lady Carew and Baroness Diana Wrangel, who is Patrick's sister. Richard Flynn, who won that first leaping competition from Strokestown in County Roscommon on his horse Sean Rue, sold the horse to Thomas Connolly of Castletown House in Selbridge for £1,000. Thomas Connolly was the great-grandfather of Patrick and Diana. Interesting also that Diana was also a key member of the Irish Nations Cup team for many years. And in 1963, she was on the winning Aga Khan Cup team, but she also won the Grand Prix in Dublin. Patrick, in his own right, was an international event rider and a former president of the FEI. Here we see an exceptional lady, Dorothea Finlater, who is 107 years old. I met Dorothea in 2016. She certainly was a fascinating lady. Alex, her son, actually in this photograph, is 80 years old. Dorothea was a superb sportswoman. She played hockey for Ireland. She toured North America with the team in 1936. And she also played golf for Ireland in 1981. But interestingly enough, she competed at the Dublin Horse Show 100 years ago on her pony, Folly. Her father, Captain Harry de Courcy Wheeler, was also associated with the Dublin Horse Show. He won the High Stone Wall in 1904. Now, I've taken a number of photographs of Dorothea, but this one is in a wheelchair. And she remarked to me that particular day, "Don't be deceived by the wheelchair. It's only for getting around the horse show." Again, the volunteers, like the stewards and the committee members of the RDS. The Dublin Horse Show couldn't be run successfully without a large number of volunteers. People who year after year put so much back into the sport that they feel probably has given them so much. We show here the main arena steward, chief steward, Leonard Cave, a former international show jumper. He's married to another international show jumper, Marion McDowell. His mother-in-law, Phyllis McDowell, shared first prize with Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands here at the show in an international competition. And his father-in-law, Herbert, trained the Inter-Grand National winner, Cahu. I'm also showing on the left here Olga Scully, who is a council, a committee member of the RDS, and a steward at the show for many years. But Olga has also shown her horses here at the show. And it was a very proud year when Sir Temple Touch, her horse, won the middleweight class. Her niece on the right is Megan, and her father, Maxie, was a steward at the RDS for 25 years. But significantly, he broke the world bareback record, the high jump record, at 6 feet 7.5 at the RDS indoor show. I just happened to meet this man, Claude Audebert, who he's introduced to me. But it's interesting the story behind people at the Dublin Horse Show. And there seems to be a story behind everybody. Because Claude, as I discussed with him, his father was a French cavalry officer who was on a buying mission of Irish horses when war broke out in 1939. He had managed to ship the horses back to France, but he himself was stranded in Dublin in 1939. So what was he going to do with his time in the meantime? He decided to study veterinary in Trinity College and qualified as a vet. And he worked for a very well-known vet, Ham Lambert, who specialized in draft horses and companion animals. And he was also a vet to the zoo. Claude's father, when he went back to France after the war, eventually became the vet to the French national stud. Claude himself told me he competed 68 years ago at the horse show on a borrowed pony, and he was delighted to be back at the show after that lapse in time. One of the most familiar faces at the Dublin Horse Show is Tommy Brennan. Each year, the RDS Library and Archives hosts an exhibition like Ride On, which is about the Army Equitation School. Another occasion it was on the Aga Khan Cup. Iris Kellett was featured. The human dudgeons of Burton Hall were featured. But for a lot of people, they were delighted that Tommy was featured in an exhibition under the title The Complete Horseman. Tommy was an international show jumper and eventer. He won 9 points from 12 stars. He was European gold medal in eventing. He participated at 2 Olympic Games in Tokyo and Mexico. He won over 1,000 red rosettes, 55 international competitions, and he won 9 national championships on 9 different horses. But Tommy will also be remembered as a course builder. He built Punchestown European track in 1991. And the theme was a fence for each county. So he replicated landmarks like Newgrange, Glendalough Round Tower, the Crannogs, the Galway Wall, and also the dolmens. And he told me that it took 20 tons of stone to build the dolmens. But I think it's very touching, the tribute that was paid when Tommy passed away from the Show Jumpers Club. And it just simply said, Tommy, our hero. Ladies' Day is a huge day for fashion at the RDS. And here we see Suzanne O'Brien, who is also a horsewoman and a milliner. And she designed this fabulous hat, the RDS clock. And if you look closely at the picture, you'll see that the hat, the clock in the hat actually keeps the same time as the real one in the background. Some of the entertaining stunt riders at the show have been the Cossacks. They're from the Ukraine, and they're famous for their pyramid and performing daring stunts at speed, and had the crowds at the edge of their seats. As you can see in the background, the main arena is packed. They were so popular. But they've had many different stunt riders and horsemen here over the years, like Monty Roberts and Pat Pirelli. And here we see another, which is Lorenzo and his Camargue horses. Lorenzo is standing on 2 horses, jumping fences, a superb horseman. Lorenzo is from the wetlands of the Camargue, if any of you have ever been there, in the Rhone Delta, a beautiful area in the south of France. And is famous also for his black bulls and pink flamingos. And he was also exceptionally popular with the spectators. Packed stands all around. Leading the Parade of Champions, which is also a very sought-after event, where all the champions of the week parade around the main arena. And it was led that particular year by Tom Dempsey and the famous Galway Blazers, where they say you can jump 30 stone walls to the mile. One of the biggest events is the hunt chase. Packed stands, very popular with the spectators. It was the brainchild of Teddy Ryan of the Scarteens, a long-time steward and RDS committee member. It attracts a huge number of spectators who are also very vocal and create a great atmosphere. And part of the reason is they're encouraged on by commentator Tom Bustede. In summary, my last slide is PJ and Sonia Casey, as I mentioned earlier. They won the Supreme Hunter Championship and the Reserve in 2019. And this photograph I titled The Kiss is one of my favourite photographs of the happy couple. To take this photograph, I had to crouch underneath the horses' heads, hold their reins in my left hand, and at the same time, press the button on the camera with my right hand. But I think it was worth it. I like the photograph anyway. So until next year, when we meet again at the greatest horse show in the world.